Hey, family, it's Patsy White. I wanted to continue in some posts that I've been putting online. Um, I'm calling them Testimonies for Pandemic Times. They're just stories that I can share with you about what God did in my life in times of crisis. When we're facing this kind of global crisis where we don't know where and how far this is going to reach into our, economic livelihood, supplies, products, food, just the things that we need to survive. When we have such uncertainty on our horizon, it's really important to look back at what God has done in times of trouble in the past. I mentioned in another post that David encouraged himself, in Ziklag when his men wanted to stone him and they had lost everything, that he went to the Lord. So these testimonies are really to encourage you to look at what God has done for you. Now, if your relationship with God is new, then you're going to begin to collect these because God is He's a deliverer, He's a provider, a sustainer, a protector. There's so many things that God does that we can't even count all of them because so much of what He does we're not even aware of. So today I want to talk about God who does the impossible. When some years ago, um, I'm the youngest of three, and I have a brother who has disabilities. My mom contacted me in distress. She was in her early 70s, and she let me know that she did not feel like she could take care of my brother anymore. He'd been disabled from birth. In fact, he was in the intensive care unit because she couldn't manage his medication. And she told me that it was a crisis and I needed to help. My mom never really, when she asked for something, it was that she was desperate. And so the only thing, we decided that we would move him to Georgia. And so I started doing research. I had no idea what kind of resources were available for people with disabilities in Georgia. And I started doing research and I talked to different departments and Department of Human Resources and, found out, what the process even was because I had no idea what it was. So basically, you have to qualify for a waiver that includes your Medicaid as well as your housing and um, uh, day hab services. And basically, it's a waiver that accompanies the individual. So it's federal and state funds that basically cover their expenses. Well, I found out there were over 4,000 people on the waiting list. And I didn't want my brother to die. I didn't want my mother to feel like she, after all these years of taking care of him, could not take care of him. And he died under her care. So I just started praying. I asked God, I just sought God. And I asked God to help me figure out this process, figure out this system. I don't even know how many phone calls I made. I got lists of places. I went to look at them. I talked to staff. And, in the meantime, oh, this was the other thing. So there was one person in the office of the state office, that could approve his waiver. She'd been there for over 30 years and she was going to retire that October. And this was August. And so I was just freaking out because, when a position at a state, they take their time filling it. And also, there's a process. When you're dealing with bureaucracy, who knows when a person would be put in their position, even if it was an interim, that they would have time to hear my plea. So I sought God. And so it was like, okay, reach out to this person that people said she never answers anybody's phone calls. I wrote letters. I left very kind, patient, but imploring messages on her voicemail. I went to the office. I stopped by. It was like never impatient, never angry, never demanding, just grace, patience, and expectation. So about 2 weeks before her retirement date, I got a voicemail from her. I talked to her staff, her assistants and everything. And she said, we've reviewed your paperwork and we're going to approve his waiver. So I praised and thanked God. And it was like, okay, this is like amazing. She said, but you're just going to have to find a bed. And it was like, So not only was there a 4,000 plus waiting list, but I had to find an agency or a facility that had a bed for him. Well, it turned out that there was this bed 25 miles south of me that nobody wanted. And it was like, okay, God, well, I don't mind driving 25 miles south out of the city where I could visit him. So I went to look at it, and it was this beautiful room in this wonderful group home with amazing staff. And the bed, it was like it was waiting for him. So my mom and my brother, they flew down for him to look at the room, and he said he wanted it. And so we arranged for him. I think they came in November, maybe around Thanksgiving, and so he moved. He moved that January, and it was a relationship. I hadn't known my brother for 20 years. I hadn't lived with him for 20 years. And it was just a process of us getting to know each other. But the point that I want to make about this, because, everything is a story that I could tell for hours and hours. The most important thing in this is that, number one, God did something impossible. My brother got approved for a waiver in front of 4,000 plus people. It was God's favor. I know I wasn't the only one contacting this woman. I wasn't the only one showing up at her office, writing letters. I wasn't the only one with 4,000 plus people waiting. But God opened the door and gave me favor. And my brother got settled. We got to know each other. We spent a couple of days each month together for years. And he's still doing well. So I want to encourage you that God is the God of the impossible. In fact, the more impossible it is, the more God steps up and shows forth his power. I give him all the glory for this thing that happened that there's no way I could have worked myself. So I want to share with you that even though your situation may not even be close to this one, I want to encourage you that in situations that do look impossible, open the door and watch God work. Thanks so much for listening. I hope this was an encouragement to you. God bless you.